One of the North's most original theatres was hit by a dramatic Christmas Day blaze. It had taken a band of enthusiasts years to bring this magnificent piece of history from dereliction back to a working theatre with an international reputation. Backstage is gutted and the superb auditorium seriously damaged. They call this the Norse La Scala. Now it looks like nothing short of a miracle will save the Tyne Theatre.
How about this? Miracles can and sometimes do happen. And here's a perfect example of the impossible being achieved. In less than a year, the Tyne Theatre and Opera House fully restored. All this in less than a year. I wonder who was the foreman. Well, you'll be meeting him later. A man who dared to dream the impossible dream. 1867 was the year this place opened, and by golly, if these walls could speak, couldn't they tell us some stories? Triumphs and tragedies, great opening nights and sad closing ones. In fact, the story of the Tyne is the story of theatre itself. Right from the start, everyone who saw this place fell in love with it. Love at first sight. And when you look around this gorgeous auditorium, you can understand exactly why, can't you? Films and television are the most popular forms of entertainment today, but for me, the live theatre's the thing. Well, it's different every time, isn't it? Every single performance is just for you as a member of that particular audience in that particular theatre on that particular night. And that's the frustrating thing about live theatre. Once eyewitnesses have passed on, how can we possibly know what the great performers of the past were like? Those golden boys and girls who strutted their stuff on this stage. Well, within the last 100 years, the film camera has tried to capture some of their magic. Now, scratchy, primitive old efforts most of them are, but nevertheless, perhaps they give us just a taste of the way things once were. Little Titch, the great burlesque comedian, came to the Tyne in 1898. Harry Ralph was only 4'6", with an extra finger on each hand, but his incredible big boot dance captured audiences all over the world. Good old Sir Harry Lauder was always a big box office draw on his many visits to the theatre. He's singing what could easily become the Tyne's own anthem. Whether it was full-scale grand opera, pantomime, or serious drama, the ever-versatile Tyne served them all in that long-lost golden age of the theatre. Triumphs and tragedies. Every theatre's had them. Here, in 1906, as they brought down the curtain on the first night of Harry Lauder's triumphant pantomime, Aladdin, his leading lady, the much-loved Bessie Featherstone, collapsed and died. All sorts of strange and peculiar things have happened here. Now, in the 1880s, stage sound effects were simple but effective and sometimes deadly. Now, they made the sound of thunder by rolling cannonballs like this down a wooden trough, and it had sort of like sleeping policemen let into it. Every time the ball hit one of these, it would bump up in the air and reproduce the sound of a roll of thunder. Alas, in 1886, one of the cannonballs hopped out of the trough, dropped 12 feet onto the head of poor Robert Crowther, the stage carpenter. It killed him. And they do say his ghost still haunts this place. In 1898, one of my all-time heroes performed here. World champion clog dancer and comedian, the immortal Dan Leno. Not long ago, I visited Japan. That's where I became a married man. Took a little walk, met a little girl, had a little talk, brain in a whirl. Went to our house, had a cup of tea. In came my father, looked at me, faithfully promised to take my life if I didn't make his girl my wife. A nice old mess I'm in, you see. With Japanese life I don't agree. A nice old mug they've made of me. I'm mixed up half and half, poor Japanese. My Japanesey wifey gives me nothing else but ching-chang, but I only sling-slang, so she gives me bing-bang. All day long upon the tom-tom you should hear her ting-tang, sing a song, ding-a-dong of Japan. Oh, what a strange place Japan is. You know, I'm so happy to be home because they do everything so differently in Japan. I went there as a tea planter, but the man who sold me the plant, he made a mistake and gave me rhubarb. So I gave him a raspberry. But the man who lived next door to me, he had a ginger beer factory. What a charming man, a charming man. He used to throw all the broken bottles into my garden. And one morning I will never forget, I was out there in the garden, weeding the glass, when suddenly, half a brick hit me on the back of the head. I thought, hello, someone wants to attract my attention. I turned round, and there was my future wife looking over a wall at me. She winked at me. She winked with her ear, not her eye, because they do things very, very differently in Japan. And then she smiled at me. Ah, such a smile. It went on and on and on. You know, she could have eaten a banana sideways, and very often did, because they do things very, very differently in Japan. But what a woman. Ah, I worship the very ground that's coming to her. Because, as I'm sure I've told you twice before, once again, my Japanesey wifey gives me nothing else but ching-chang, but I only sling-slang, so she gives me bing-bang. All day long upon the tom-tom you should hear her ding-tang, sing a song, ding-a-dong of Japan. Hello, young man. Tell me, Mr. Leno, what do you think of the Tyne? Ah, absolutely fantastic. You know, it's one of the biggest and the best provincial venues I've played. But somehow, you know, even for all its size, you feel as though you could reach out and pluck the eyebrows of Mrs. Cannybody sitting in the back row of the gods. What about the acoustics? Ah, they're putting traps down for them. No, the sound. Oh, the sound, yes. Well, the singers, like myself, realize that it's as good as La Scala. That's La Scala Milan, not La Scala Scunthorpe. So no worries about the Tyne. Well, just one. This newfangled invention, the kinematograph, the bioscope, people seem to like it. You know, I've a feeling in me water that perhaps one day moving pictures will do away with the likes of us altogether. Thank you, Mr. Leno. Thank you. Peculiar person. The great little Leno wasn't far wrong. When they dropped the curtain after a comic opera in February 1919, they rolled down a silver screen and Tarzan of the Apes swung on. And all this was sealed off and forgotten.